Good afternoon, traders. Welcome to OptionsTender. It's Thursday, September 25. So we're taking a look at SPX. We'll look at the bonds or Treasury rates. We'll do TNX, which is inverse of the bonds. And we'll take a look at VIX and some of the other indices to show that we've had some breakdowns. There's been some technical sell points, and I want to give you a little bit of insight on what I think is happening on the 65-minute here as well. So make sure you stick around for all this. Hit that notification bell. Also, we're doing this intraday about 12:24 Eastern Standard Time. Consider becoming a YouTube member if you want to get these videos intraday, and we can try to help with what we think may be happening or what the probability of something occurring might be. Okay, so let's jump into it. We have SPX on the daily time frame. We're looking at the tweezer top reversal here. We got that confirmation and we gapped down today. It looks like there's a candle, a reversal candle here. Do I think that's the case? It's possible, but I do think we're going to get one more slight low here, and that could set us up for a inverse head, or for a head and shoulder with the left shoulder, head, right shoulder. So I correct head and shoulder, not an inverse head and shoulder. Okay, so at this point, we're still looking at this trend being green. Okay, the trend is up. We're still green. That's showing that the weekly period is still above last week's period, okay, on the weekly time frame. And we're pushing back to this 20 exponential moving average. So far, no closes underneath. So no, from this point of view, the trend is up. No breakdown yet. Okay, so throwing out our moving averages, we're underneath that 8 EMA, which means the momentum is sideways to down, and the 20 trend is up still so far. We're almost there testing it. I do think there's a chance that we do test the 20 and also this low here. That would bring us into a little bit of support there. And so that's what we're going to talk about in the lower time frames. But let's throw on the traditional technical analysis look here. So with this wedge forming here, we left this wedge the same because it was a nice symmetrical move here. And that's a good trend line because we have a couple touches, 3, 4, and it acted as support and resistance up here as well. So we're just going to use this how it is. There's other ways that we are looking at this. And you can see exactly where we're holding on the bottom of this trend. Again, there's good points here of reference. So holding on to it so far. I do think this is eventually going to break. Is it going to break down and then back test first? Well, we also have on the 65 another way to look at this. So again, I'll show you. If this holds here, then we could be back testing this other wedge that we'll be looking at. All right, but so far in the big picture, it hasn't broken down from this point. Okay. So looking at our McClellan oscillator, breadth is bad. All right, there's nothing holding the market up. Nvidia, a little bit of Nvidia there. Apple, yeah. Okay, and so we are looking for this to continue. Do we get the bounce right from here? That's fine, but we could go much lower on this. Okay, and so if you're a bull, you're looking at that being oversold, and you want to see new highs coming. Okay, but our other indicators don't go along with that thesis. So this one, we're just now getting a crossover, barely have a red histogram. So that means this yellow leader line is starting to cross over a bear cross on that MACD blue line. All right, and when this divergence starts to play out, it's going to get ugly. Okay, but we're forming negative market structures, so it takes a little bit of time for that to happen. Now, we did get this lower high here after this equilibrium breakout, and we were over bought on this, and now we're just heading, we're getting weaker in the market so far. All right, we had our sell signal 2 days ago, I think, on this one, a crossover, the trend broke there, and we're starting to move lower. So it doesn't mean you can't have any bounces in between where the leader line goes and back tests the other line, or even, gets a whipsaw headed lower. But I do think this is cycling lower now. Let's head over to SPY. All right, so on SPY, we're looking at, let's get this D mark here, the sequence, and we're starting to count to the downside. So we're at a 1-2 count. I want to see this go all the way to a 9 count and maybe have some sort of wave 1 series here headed lower. On the money flow index, we noticed that we had that double top there. Let me throw in divergences. So here's another way to look at it. Here's our previous channel here, which formed a wedge. And we broke down. We're back testing from that wedge now. So you're going to get a couple different looks here. That's the beauty of the market. You have different points of view. But here's the divergence. It's been forming over here for some time. We got new peaks here that were overbought. So this is starting to cycle. And again, this should follow sync with everything else and cycle all the way lower as we get into a first impulse wave 1. Or an A if you're looking for new highs to come, an A into a B into a C. So if you want to know what in depth we're looking at in the higher time frames, then go back to, I'll post the video up top and at the end. I believe it was the weekend video. I did on Monday. So Bollinger Band, we're at that 20 moving average, the exponential. So that's where we're pausing right now. And the Elliott oscillator, again, that lower high there. Let's see if there's any shelves, volume shelves we can look at. Okay, so all right, our first shelf, we're kind of breaking down from it. We're a little bit underneath it right now. And when this trend continues, looks like the next shelf here is around 644 and 635. So they're pretty tight together, but some big nodes there. So let's say 644, 635. Range. Let's keep an eye on what's happening at 644 and underneath. So let's go over to VIX right now. Check out these moving averages, and this was very helpful on this last move that we had higher here. So the momentum is up and the trend is up so far. And what's happening is we're rejecting off of this wide wedge formation here. So we had this original wedge we broke out from, and now we're kind of back testing in a sense. I don't know if we'll go much lower with this reversal tail here, or if we'll just go higher from this point. But we are at the resistance point with the 100 moving average as well, which has been acting well as a good resistance, right? So obviously, price has to get over there. If you start to see some bullishness in the VIX at this point, get over that 100. The next point is the 200 and that almighty 19 that we've been looking at. Now, notice when you have this wedge like this, you can almost see it start to curve. So we're forming a base here. We're forming a bottom, and that bottom could move out a little bit further before actually having a true breakout. And it looks like excuse me, it looks like 19 is going to be that level, because that's your 200 moving average. And you have huge resistance with that 200 this whole entire way, okay? So that's kind of the goal for the market to move lower. Let's go to TNX. All right, so we had a big move in Treasury rates here today. We talked about the dollar yesterday. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone. You can look at yesterday's video if you want to talk about the dollar. And here are the bonds. And there's a couple different ways you can draw this if you move on higher time frames. But this is what we're essentially looking at in the near term for an equilibrium. And again, like when you start stretching it out, obviously that equilibrium gets larger, right? So we're still within it. And we'll keep an eye to see what happens here. But we're getting a big move. And so when you have a 1% or more move on treasuries and bonds, it's going to affect the market. Okay. So what we're trying to do here to kind of tighten up the fundamental look of the market is see, is this an inverse head and shoulder? Are we breaking out to the upside? Is this a triangle that is a continuation pattern to the upside? And we have stagflation while the market, while the economy is shrinking, you have inflation rising. Okay, that's that 1960s. I went over this in depth. Okay, this 1960s sideways move where we might be in the same pattern for 10, 20 years, and then if it continues to drop down and we have a reversal pattern, then that's your standard, in my opinion, your standard recession type move where the rates go down. It says the economy is going down and we need to stimulate the market. It also is going to say that inflation is going down as well. All right, so that would be your garden varietal recession there. All right, so let's go over to, let's see what SMH is doing. Let's do the Qs. It's happening on the Qs. All right, you could, if you're drawing this as a channel, we have that fake break just like SPX and SPY do as well. We're underneath that 8 EMA. We're holding on to that 20 trend so far, but you see we're getting a bounce. IWM. All right, the breakdown of that that wedge. Are we done to the downside and we're back testing and then go lower? Or do we go a little bit lower and snap back up? That's what we're going to try to figure out here. And kind of this first initial move, although very small in the scheme of things, that easy trade right there is done. All right, so caught most of that, just kind of wait to see what happens first. If we back test first, and that's an objective short. If we go a little lower, then you're going to notice that we'll probably have on the 65-minute a positive divergence. Okay, so again, we'll check that out on SPY. All right, another technical breakdown right here. This wedge finally broke down. We're underneath that 8 and holding the 20, pretty similar to everything else. So we're kind of lining up for the entire market to line up together and move down together. It's typically what things do. Okay, let's go to SPY. Let's check out this 65-minute. All right, and right off the bat, we'll look at our counts here. All right, so our first target is the bottom of this wedge at 635. All right, there's that 644 we were talking about down to 635, right? That zone. So that brings us to that target there. That would be that second volume shelf. Do we bounce off of this 644 or pause there? Just keep those levels in mind. And then ultimately, if things start to break down a little harder, a little faster, a little stronger, then that target 2 would be typical move down to the previous wave 4 here, and also the beginning of this ending diagonal where your typical measured move would be. And we'll keep these ABCs here to play around with. If this is a corrective move, this could be an ABC, right? So if we have, I haven't updated this in a long time, but here you'd have some sort of ABC happening, and then you want to go to new highs after that. And that's, again, what we talked about in the major market. I'm not going to fix all this yet, but look at the old video that I just did. So, all right. Now, in the near term, very near term, we broke down from this wedge here. And so the real big question is so far we have really a 3-wave move. But it really looks incomplete, because if you're looking at this as it being an A, B, C, and you want higher prices, this still doesn't have an impulse in it. Okay, so even if you're really bullish and this is an A, B, you want to see a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave move lower. And then you can argue that that's either a higher degree A or this correction is done. All right. And we're looking at it like this as primarily. So a 1, 2, but I think there's 3 waves in there. This looks like 3 waves in ABC, right? So you have a wave 3, a 4, 3-wave move, a bear flag for a 4 so far. And then we should get one more low here. And this matched up really well. When we're looking at the 1 into the 2, we have our 162 extension for wave 3. We hit that, and that gives us a higher probability that this trend is changing, and we should see a 4 and a 5 in here. So that kind of brings up that possibility that this move is not done yet. So next we have this. We'll go ahead and put the traditional look here. So we have this gap underneath us. Also, this options expected move to the lower end. Remember, you have an upper end and a lower end that the options market seeks to get to. Sorry, I'm just looking at. Okay, so as we move further, if we do get this new low here, you're probably going to have a happy place here at the options expected move, but don't underestimate the next move, because wave 3 is already the longest over wave 1. So wave 5 can go even deeper. The problem is we'll probably get some support at the gap or closing the gap. Okay. And by the way, this is an island gap here. We had a gap down, gap up, and then a gap down for this to be an island. Okay. So, but let's look at these. Let's look at everything first as I talk you through this. If we go directly up from here, then something else happened in the really low time frame where you're probably at 1, 2 down here, and then you get your 3, 4, and 5 as a leading diagonal, something like that, where it's complete. And that's possible, but I don't think that's probable at this point. I do think you get a lower low. So the trend is rolling over here. It's still green because in the weekly period, we're still above last week's candle. And we have this 20 exponential moving average. So the trend in this near term is down. But in the higher time frames, you still have that headwind that the weekly trend is still up. Okay, we looked at the moving averages are 8. The momentum's down. The trend is down on the 65-minute. But here's where we talk about what could happen here according to our indicators. So right now, we're getting this move higher. We're oscillating higher here. So that gave us the bounce on the slow stoke, right? And then we had these really oversold conditions right now where we got down to 12, 14. And so that means that we're probably at least going to get a bounce. And if we do get a new low, you'll probably see a higher low here. Okay. And then my wife is calling. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So we're looking at this slow stoke. Does this curl over? Do we get a new low? We'll probably see a higher low right here. Okay. And again, we're looking for divergences, but this can go back to test that 0 line on any further bounce of the upside. But again, the momentum's heading lower. So I don't think we'll see any sort of divergence here. That's usually at like a little bit higher degree low, where you start to see divergence in the MACD. All right, so let's see what happens. Again, we're prepared. If we go higher directly from here, then we're going to have an objective short. If we go lower from here, you want to take some profit going into these new lows, because it's not likely that we'll go much further past these points here of maybe 650. At the lowest. That brings us to this 200 moving average down low, and also our former resistance here. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at DMARC. We had a 9 count, I believe, to the downside here, and that gave us that little bit of a bounce. And so let's see what happens if we get another 9 or so. No setup right now on the hourly. Our money flow index, so there's still distribution. This hasn't cycled all the way through yet. Again, I would like to see this move all the way lower if we're going to get a bounce or a new low, and then start to oscillate to the upside when we get a corrective move into a wave 2. So far, we're just looking for wave 1. Is it done, or do we have one more low before it's done? So Bollinger Bands, you see that price action is pushing, got way underneath that band with oversold conditions. So that was an easy buy right there. If you're that type of trader off of Bollinger Bands, that was a setup. Elliott Oscillator finally going negative here after that divergence. Is this going to stick around? It may whipsaw on these lower time frames. We're not getting extensive moves yet until we get into we start stretching out and forming market structure to the downside. So yeah, may whipsaw back to the green area, but so far red. All right. Anything else that we could add here? I think we're good. You guys, thanks for joining us here at OptionsTender. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.